Hi, this is Joe Gilmore, and welcome to the video version of my blog on the letter that shall not be named. If you'd like to read this blog, you can go to batshitcave.blogspot.com. Today is Saturday, August 14th, 2021, and what is the letter that shall not be named? This is the letter that I will not name, and this phrase highlighted in green is the phrase I will not utter. Why not? Why am I being so cryptic and weird here? Well, back in February of this year, I did a blog called A Conspiracy Theory Based on True Events. And in this blog, I talk about the phrase conspiracy theory and how mainstream media has been weaponizing that phrase and just sort of slapping it on anything they want to delegitimize or that they want to cancel. And I'm not quite sure how it works, but they seem to have it figured out. You slap the phrase on it, and just magically, it's just toxic. It's bad produce. So in that blog, I look at Google results, and this is a more recent query. But as you can see, this phrase here that I said I'm not going to utter comes up right at the top. Now, when I did that video back in February. And take note, this is out of 133 million results. Back then in February, I think it came up as like number 6 or 7. But it was still on first page Google results. So clearly Google has this association with this word and the phrase conspiracy theory, which means they obviously want to cancel it out very badly because I think if the results were just truly objective, I don't necessarily think that this phrase would come up so high, but I don't really know. The point I'm trying to make is that because this word came up in one of the results, I mentioned it. And I didn't spend a lot of time dwelling on it. I just mentioned it and moved on. And because of that, something got triggered in YouTube's little algorithm there or whatever, their little bots or whatever they got. And a warning label was slapped on my video saying, this is a debunked conspiracy theory and followers of this are dangerous and they are terrorists and blah, 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 exaggerating a little bit. But, it was kind of annoying. It was very obnoxious. It's like, you know what? I wasn't even talking about that. I was talking about something completely different. And just because I said the word, I got a warning on my video. So, it's just the state of things these days. It's like sort of automatic censorship without checking. So the label did get removed, I noticed. I don't think it's on there anymore after a couple weeks. So that tells me that some sort of algorithm that's checking for certain words or phrases gets triggered and then just slaps a label or probably censors your video outright. And then somebody might come back in and double check and go, oh, whoops, we didn't really need to censor that. It's like the guilty until proven innocent approach, which is, that's the way things are these days. So anyhow, what are we talking about here? What is the actual topic? The topic is, this phrase, but specifically this individual who goes by the name that is represented by that letter. So let's just call this person Mr. Letter from now on, just for simplicity. And as you can see, it's down here like a signature. And what is this post? Where is it from? It's from a message board that here's a mirror site of a message board where Mr. Letter posts. And here is a bunch of the posts. As you can see, there's 4,953 posts. This was posted December 8th, 2020. This was the last time Mr. Letter posted anything. So this whole movement, quote unquote movement, cult, whatever that you've heard about, it's all about these posts right here. That's it. There's nothing else. There's nobody out there directing people, telling them, oh, go, riot over there, go attack the Capitol. No, there's nobody like that. It's just posts here that anyone can look at and you can research it. This is a Twisted Sister video, by the way, that this goes to, which got taken down because I guess we're not going to take it as a real threatening song to society or something. But this is what it's all about. This is it. right here, these posts. Now, this is easy on the eyes compared to the actual direct link, which is, I'll click it here and you'll see. This goes to the message board where Mr. Letter, when he was active posting, was posting fairly regularly. And you can see here, there's the date, December 8th, 2020, and here's the link to the video. But what you also see are responses from individuals who are anonymous. So as far as I know, I don't have an account here, but as far as I know, anyone can go here and sign up and post whatever the hell they want. You can post stuff here that's supportive of Mr. Letter. You can post stuff that isn't supportive. So you can imagine there's a lot of trolls on here and all kinds of whoever. You know, Joe Biden can be on here for all we know. I think everyone gets their own special number. I think that's what distinguishes the posters. But the first takeaway from here that I think people need to realize is that people can post anything they want here. The mainstream media can go in there and read into whatever they want from these posts, and they can and have and will again associate these posts with Mr. Letter and sort of say they're the same thing, which is kind of like, going on Twitter. Sorry, I'm jumping around here because I go cross-eyed looking at this. It's kind of like going on Twitter and saying, I posted something on Twitter about roses or flowers, and then someone, responded by, talking about how much they hate women or they hate minorities or whatever. Is that person's response representative of my thread? No. I was talking about flowers, and someone who just decided they didn't like me decided to spread hatred on my post, completely unrelated. So, that's essentially what the mainstream media does. They go in and they look at these responses, or they send people out to, sign up fake accounts and respond directly, and they sort of push whatever narrative they want about Mr. Letter. And that's kind of what this very post is talking about right here, post 4,881. It's exactly what Mr. Letter is talking about. He says, there is me, which is represented by the letter. There are, these anonymous people, which is these people down here. See, there's hundreds of responses sometimes. Okay, so there's the responders. There's the guy who posts it. And then there's that word I won't say, which is more or less a mainstream media creation. What it does is it smushes the two together and says they're the same thing. So, if my name is John and I post on Twitter, and someone named, Lisa posts something I don't like, well, then the mainstream media comes in and goes, John Lisa, that's a debunked conspiracy theory. Like, it doesn't make any sense because I'm John and she's Lisa, and I'm saying one thing and she's saying something else. And how is her comment automatically the sentiment of what I'm trying to say? So I think I made my point here. So that's the point that Mr. Letter is making here. What happens when you cannot attack the information? Do you attack through use of others? Not all anonymous posters are authentic. So it's exactly what he's talking about. He's saying, don't pay attention to the responders because they could be anyone. They don't represent me. They don't represent, Mr. Letter. So that's the very point of the post. So what is the significance of this letter? Well, one popular theory, and nobody knows who this person is, by the way. People who say they do, I saw him walking down the street the other day, bullshit. Nobody knows who this person is. Could be a group of people. Could be a woman. We don't know. Nobody knows if it's Trump or it's Biden or William Barr. I mean, nobody knows. Your next door neighbor. But one theory is that it has something to do with this definition here that we find at military.wikia.org, which says this letter designates a United States Department of Energy security clearance, equivalent to a United States Department of Defense top secret clearance, and critical nuclear weapon design information. Clearances, DOE clearances apply for access specifically relating to atomic or nuclear related materials. So if this person has that level of clearance, if that's what they're trying to indicate by using this letter, that means this individual or group of individuals are pretty, high up in there in the military, system. So, but again, we don't know. But it seems this might be what it's alluding to. And here we see this is the name of the board that I just linked to that we were talking about that has the anonymous responders. And there's the address where you can find it if you want to look this up for yourself. And remember, the people who respond to the posts aren't necessarily representative of the poster himself. Just like the people who troll your Twitter posts aren't necessarily representative of what you were posting. So occasionally, Mr. Letter has posted stuff that those anonymous responders have posted. And the reason he does this is because he's trying to say, look, this person gets it. This person, agrees with what I'm trying to say. So here's what the anonymous person said. Why do they never ask the anonymous posters why they are here? Real anonymous posters are here as we follow the evidence, documented, verifiable evidence. We are building the truth of our history so we can expose and dismantle the corruption that has plagued our world for millennia. Now, let's just stop there. That's a reasonable statement. I mean, there is corruption in the government, obviously. There is absolute power corrupts absolutely. There are people in positions of power who are sociopaths, who are psychopaths. That's just common knowledge. You have to be an idiot to assume that, everyone in the mainstream media and everyone in the holding high positions in society, they're all just altruistic and they all have our best interests in mind. And none of them are blackmailed and none of them are compromised. I mean, you're talking about you're living in a fantasy world. So it's like this idea that the anonymous individuals who follow Mr. Letter's posts are just these like totally irrational extremists. That's a myth. That is a stereotype that, okay, may ring true here and there, but it's like, Charles Manson was really into Helter Skelter, the whole Beatles thing, the White Album. Does that mean the Beatles were responsible for what Charles Manson did? The guy who murdered John Lennon was really into the book Catcher in the Rye. Does that mean the author of Catcher in the Rye is responsible for what that, insane guy did? Plenty of serial killers have blamed their actions on the Bible. Oh, Jesus told me to do it. Are you going to start burning Bibles now? I think I made my point. I invite any publication to print this as a statement of fact from an actual anonymous poster on the board. We do not tell you what to think or how to feel about a topic. We simply dig for the truth and then present what we find so it can be scrutinized by our peers and further corroborated. The choice to know what we have found, verified, and presented is entirely up to you. So this is just about trying to find the truth. That's what this post is about. Mr. Letter reposted it because he's saying this is representative of what I'm about. So, that's not a conspiracy theory. It's just a reasonable statement by a reasonable human being who happens to follow what Mr. Letter says. I don't really see a conspiracy theory in there. We are not about violence, subversion, or control. We are simply providing fact-based information free of charge to the world. Okay? It's not about far-right extremism or any extremism. It's just we want to know the truth. We don't want to hurt people. We just, seems pretty reasonable. I mean, I'm not like some big decoder of these posts, but I mean, you can just be a casual observer and read something like this and you can go, okay, reasonable enough. It doesn't mean you're a fanatic. It doesn't mean, you worship every word of Mr. Letter. You read a few posts. Some of them might make sense. Some of them might not. Some might leave you scratching your head, like, what the hell does that mean? But I mean, it doesn't make you a far right extremist. You know, no outside comms. A lot of people have translated this to mean that Mr. Letter only communicates via this message board. That's the only place he does. So, if you see all these articles about, Mr. Letter was walking down the street, or Mr. Letters was leading his cult into a pizza parlor to shoot up a bunch of pedos, that's all BS, because he only posts on this board. What people do with the information is up to them. It has nothing to do with him. But as we saw, he will repost something occasionally to sort of echo and acknowledge, yes, that's what I'm trying to say. The same way you might retweet something if you agree with it. It's the same idea. So if we do a Google search for this phrase, we find this stupid horned clown guy here who mainstream media loves to associate with, this phrase for some reason. Well, obviously they want to delegitimize it, and this is their little clown representative who's, if you do a Google search for this term and you look at images, you can see there he is, second result. And they're sort of mixing it all in, and they're creating a stereotype. They're saying, like, anyone who's into this, number one, is a fanatic, right? There's no middle ground. You're just a fanatic. And, they're like extreme patriots, and they're extreme Trumpies, and they're dangerous, and they make this face. And they want you to associate every picture here, like, yeah, they're all the same thing. They all commute. They're all neighbors, But you can, if you just look at this guy, I mean, he's a fake. Who is this guy? What's all these tattoos? Like, that looks like almost like one of those like FBI pedophile symbols that you see on their, or one of their pages there. So, I mean, these are agent provocateurs, and if you want to read more about that, go look at some of the articles Revolver.news has published about the January 6th Capitol riot. There were agent provocateurs present there. Okay, there was one guy in particular, John Sullivan, who was flat out wearing a Trump hat, and we know he was a member of BLM and probably Antifa and the rest of it. And he got paid for footage filming Ashley Babbitt get shot dead, murdered. She was unarmed. She was shot by a Capitol police officer, and she was the only person who was murdered that day. And nobody has been charged with insurrection to this day, yet they keep calling it an insurrection. So the whole thing was just a false flag event. And as I've said in other blogs, a false flag event does not mean there was no violence. It doesn't mean there wasn't any real blood. It just means that the premise of the whole thing was false, that the general understanding of what it was all about is not true, that there was something else going on there. But I don't want to stay on that topic too much because we're talking about Mr. Letter here. So I go through here and I talk about some of these results. I'm not going to go through all of them. But one thing I do want to talk about is in Wikipedia, they go into great detail to talk about how this is some debunked conspiracy theory. Now, first of all, that's like saying New York Times is a debunked weather report. Weather isn't the only thing that the New York Times publishes. There's lots of other stuff in there. But, I'm just going to be an idiot retard and just like, oh, that's just dumb, debunked weather report. Like, it's almost that stupid. Like, if you look at these boards, I mean, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of different topics. I mean, there's a Twisted Sister video here. There's just one word there, just a name. There's just a picture here. Like, in order to put this all together and try to, here's a letter, here's, there's articles linked. Some of these articles go to like, New York Times articles. Here's something from Fox News. Facts and figures, sometimes from, CDC, FBI, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of different types of information here. Look, here's a link to the FBI. So to sit here and go, well, here's what it all means, and it's all about aliens from outer space and Democrats drinking the blood of children, like that's just total oversimplified BS. That's MSM's way of just canceling it out. No, you don't need to read it. We're going to tell you what it's all about. Don't pay attention. It's just crazy. Don't read it. Ultimately, they don't want you reading these posts. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to toxify it before you've even gotten close enough to read it for yourself, because apparently you're not smart enough to tell the difference between dangerous information and real information. I don't know. It's all very odd. So the FBI is calling, this whole thing a conspiracy theory, and they're designating it as, one step from a terrorist organization. And one of the examples they use is the guy that went in and to the pizza parlor and was going to try and shoot up a bunch of, pedos, I guess. So as I said, no outside comms. So just because some guy wears a shirt with Mr. Letter on it and he's waving a flag and has like a Trump hat on, that does not mean he's a representative of Mr. Letter any more than Charlie Manson is a representative of the Beatles' White Album. It's the same thing. So the FBI is kind of feeding this fear mongering of this invented stereotype that the media really made. It's like they're working together, when you really look closely at it. And one of the things that is suggested is that Mr. Letter is, some type of anti-Semitic extremist group. And, if that's true, then we should see a lot of anti-Jewish stuff in these posts, right? Well, all you got to do is do a search on these posts, because you can search these posts for anything. Put the word Jew in there, okay? And if it's so anti-Semitic, we should find a lot of entries about Jews, right? That's very negative. Okay, so out of 4,000 plus posts, this is everything. There's only 8 posts here. And look, some of these aren't even about Jews. Look, jewelry, Here's an article that just has the word Jewish in it. Sally Jewell. So out of these few results, all of them aren't even referencing Jews directly. One of these posts, number 940, is comparing the Nazi brown shirts, the SA, to the actions of Antifa. Now, let's take a look at the meaning of domestic terrorism for a moment. Violent criminal acts committed by individuals and or groups to further ideological goals stemming from domestic influences such as those of political, religious, social, racial, or environmental nature. That's Antifa. They fall under this category. Yet they get a free pass because their name is Antifa, which means they're anti-fascist. Well, okay, so I'm going to put a name tag on my chest that says nice guy, and then I'm going to run down the street and I'm going to just randomly destroy houses and attack people. And that's going to be okay because my name tag says I'm a nice guy, right? So I mean, this is what they do. They, I'm gonna say I'm this, but then my actions are gonna express something completely different. It's like we're all going crazy as a country. It's like we're losing our minds collectively as a country. And as I said in another post, we are in the middle of a war on consciousness and communication and definition, and it's like we're all going mad as a country and as a world. So anyhow, Mr. Letter is comparing the actions of Antifa with Hitler's brown shirts, which was leading up to the climax of World War II. So it's not taking an anti-Jew stance. It's proposing that Antifa are kind of, hey, let's look around, let's pay attention here because it's kind of scary what's going on here. Now, as I said, The query for the word Jew only brought up 8 results out of 4,953 posts. So if this is such an anti-Semitic uh, entity, you would think that the word Jew would come up a lot more than 8 times. And out of these 8 results, as we saw, 4 contain words that simply have the word Jew in it. In other words, it wasn't even referencing Jews directly. It was referencing names or words that had that word in it, like jewelry. So that leaves 4 posts out of 4,953 that actually reference Jews directly by name. So this idea that it's all anti-Semitic is absurd. And all you got to do is look at the posts and do a query on the word. And then look at the posts and you decide if they're anti-Semitic. So we looked at all 4. We talked about post number 940, which talks about the brown shirts, comparing them to Antifa. Post number 526 is talking about a wiki entry for Mark Medzvinsky, and who happens to be Jewish. And he's the son of Edward Medvinsky. And this guy, Mark, he's married to Chelsea Clinton, all right? Now, Edward Medvinsky, who doesn't appear to be mentioned on Mark Medvinsky's Wikipedia page, which is kind of odd. Usually they say who the parents are. But you find out why when you look at who he was. Because Medvinsky was indicted, the father was indicted and later pleaded guilty to 31 of 69 felony charges of bank fraud, mail fraud, and wire fraud. So Chelsea Clinton is married to a man whose father is a serious criminal, indicted. So, and he happens to be Jewish. That's the only reason that result came up. So again, it's not anti-Semitic. It's not saying he's bad because he's Jewish. It's merely a link to the article. And it's up to you to decide what you want to do with that information. Mr. Letter is not telling you, oh, go hunt him down and kill him, So this idea, this presumption held by MSM and FBI that Mr. Letter is inspiring anti-Semitism is total bullshit. It's just not true. And the question is, why are they trying so hard to portray Mr. Letter this way? Why do they need to invent this stereotype? And why are people so gullible? And why do they just eat it up so easily? And this gets into mind control and, propaganda and how powerful it is and why I do all these, loony posts here talking about it, because you can see how this becomes a danger to society. Okay, so result number 8 in Google talks about this guy that went to the pizza place and was going to shoot it all up. And again, the FBI used this as an example of the extremist behavior that's being inspired by Mr. Letter, even though Mr. Letter didn't tell this guy to do anything. It's like saying that, I read the lyrics on a song and then I went and did what the song said, and now the band has to go to court and defend themselves because they told me to do it. Just BS. They didn't tell me to do anything. If I'm a nutcase and I translate the lyrics wrong, why is the band responsible for what I did? So it's all just, in a way, this is all just an extreme repeat of everything we've seen before in history. But for some reason, I won't even say for some reason. The fact that people eat this stuff up and believe what the MSM says, what that really shows is how good they are at what they do and how they've really evolved their techniques. I mean, you've got punk rockers, people that are supposed to be against the mainstream and against popular stuff. They're all, rushing out, persecuting people for not doing exactly what the mainstream is telling everyone to do. Oh, take the vaccine, and who cares about the Constitution, and who cares about freedom, and blah, blah, blah. And these are the people that are supposed to be all about freedom and thinking for themselves, yet they're all thinking in unison, and they're all disagreeing. I mean, you would think there would be a little difference of opinion there, but it's obviously just this group think. It's just very, very strange what's going on right now. Back on July 23rd, Joe Biden said something very strange. And the question from the reporter was, are there people in the Democratic Party who want to defund the police? And Joe Biden said, are there people in the Republican Party who think we're sucking the blood out of kids? And then he kind of walked away awkwardly. And the reporter was just stunned. She was like, what? So Now Joe Biden is putting a conspiracy theory out there that kind of stems from this whole weird false assumption that Mr. Letter is promoting all this stuff. So if Joe Biden is right and there is this big conspiracy held by Republicans and they all follow Mr. Letter, well, we should find it on his posts, right? We should find something about it. So I went and looked it up. So the words suck and sucking separately, they don't bring any results. But if you put the word blood, well, that should pull up this whole cannibal child blood sucking thing. That should bring up all the weird kooky stuff, right? So the word blood brings up 27 results out of 4,953. Out of these 27 posts, most are innocuous biblical references or are contained within the context of bloodlines, as in family connections like royalty, things like this. Others are clearly unrelated to the topic, so not worth mentioning. 5 entries, however, make reference to something called the Bloody Wonderland. Now, I don't know what that is, I didn't know what that was, so that was something I couldn't say either way whether that supported Joe Biden's conspiracy theory or not. So I had to look into it to understand, and this was a very strange little rabbit hole right here, let me tell you. So what I found was there's this series of books called The Chronicles of Blood by this author called Kriya Reeton, which sounds like it sounds like a pen name. A lot of authors will use a pen name, which is a fake name that they will use as an author. It sounds like the word cretin, which means a stupid person. So they're being clever. And the Bloody Wonderland is all about Alice in Wonderland. Now, apparently there's this genre of books that are basically, they'll tell a story within the context of Alice in Wonderland, but obviously they'll make up their own stories within that world. So this is like a popular genre, I guess. I didn't know this. But it's pretty well known in mind control, the people who study mind control and the history of it, that Alice in Wonderland is one of those stories that is used a lot to trigger certain thoughts. So anyway, this book Bloody Wonderland came out fairly recently, but it is part of these chronicles that take place in Alice in Wonderland. But the strange thing that I noticed about this is that the author, this cartoon rendering, looks a little bit like a young Hillary Clinton. Now, why is that strange? Well, let's look on here. In this post here, post 83, one of the posts where the word blood comes up, that word comes up, Wonderland, and mentions Lewis Carroll, who's the author of Alice in Wonderland. And what is this? Hillary Clinton in Wonderland. Wait a minute. Hold on. Saudi Arabia, Alice in Wonderland, Hillary Clinton, Bloody Wonderland. I'm getting lost here. What is this all about? What does Saudi Arabia have? What is Hillary and Saudi Arabia and Alice? What is the connection here? This is getting too weird. Well, there's a book. The post links a book. Here it is right here. Here's the post. It's on Amazon. You can find it. It's called Hillary Clinton in Wonderland. What the hell is this? Well, it's apparently the story of Alice in Wonderland. According to the critics, the reviews I read, it's simply Alice in Wonderland, but the word Hillary Clinton inserted instead of Alice, which I don't get why anyone would do that. And then it includes quotes from Hillary Clinton at the end. Now, I think this came out around the time Hillary Clinton was running for president. And I don't know what this is all about. The author says Lewis Carroll and Hillary Clinton fan club. Who is Hillary Clinton fan club? Like, that's not a person, that's a group. So, that's listed as the author. What is this weird price that's in a different, country's currency? The reviews are all deplorable. Everyone says it's crap. So one of my guesses is that this book is some type of mind control triggering device. And again, if you're not familiar with mind control, if you haven't read books about it, what I just said to you might be gibberish. But if you explore the topic of mind control, you read books like Transformation by Kathy O'Brien, or you read some books by Fritz Springmeier. Now, I don't necessarily endorse Fritz Springmeier. he's a little bit, I'm not sure what I think of him, but he wrote a book, I think it's called Total Mind Control. And if you read through that, you're going to have a whole new viewpoint of basically most of the serial killers in the world and most of the, your John F. Kennedy assassinations and things like this. Whether he's legitimate or not, I think that book is important to read, just as a primer in what mind control is all about. And then you look at people like Britney Spears, you're going to look at them a lot differently after you read a book like this. Anyhow, I don't want to digress too much here. So I'm trying to get to the bottom of what is this bloody Wonderland thing all about? Well, if you search on Google, all you get is results from this Chronicles of Blood series. But if you go to DuckDuckGo, the second result is this article by journal-neo.org, and apparently they call Saudi Arabia the bloody Wonderland. And this whole story is about how the Sharia law and the brutality of Saudi Arabia and how they're just beheading people for petty offenses, and almost like they're just using Sharia law as an excuse to just brutally, execute and murder people. So it's kind of an interesting article worth reading. So I can't say that I really got to the bottom of this whole thing, but that's not really the point. I'm not here to I'm not here to translate Mr. Letter's posts per se, although I did attempt to do that in a couple spots. But if you want good translations of these posts, there are a lot of people out there doing it. One guy that goes by Praying Medic is a good guy to follow, Dave Hayes. In fact, he wrote a book called The Great Awakening, which you should read. Read his books if you really want to know what this is all about. Okay, I am not an expert. He is an expert. He is the one to read. So, I'm not claiming that I got anywhere near the root of what this whole bloody Wonderland thing was all about, but I did find some interesting information. This picture here was taken by Lewis Carroll. Okay, he took this picture of this girl named Alice Liddell, and I believe this is the girl that Alice in Wonderland was based on. He was kind of obsessed with her, I think. And here's a portrait he painted of her. He took a lot of pictures of naked children. This was one thing he was really into. And if you read the biography by Morton N. Cohen, in his Lewis Carroll biography, by the way, his real name wasn't Lewis Carroll. His real name was Charles Dodgson. Lewis Carroll was his pen name. And Morton N. Cohen, in his biography on Lewis Carroll, said, "We cannot know to what extent sexual urges lay behind Charles's preference for drawing and photographing children in the nude. He contended the preference was entirely aesthetic, but given his emotional attachment to children, as well as his aesthetic appreciation of their forms, his assertion that his interest was strictly artistic is naive. He probably felt more than he dared acknowledge even to himself." So, just over half of Lewis Carroll's surviving work depicts young girls, though about 60% of his original photographic portfolio is now missing. At least 4 complete volumes and around 7 pages of text are missing from Dodgson's 13 diaries. The loss of the volumes remains unexplained. The pages have been removed by an unknown hand. A popular explanation for one missing page, 27 June 1863, is that it might have been torn out to conceal a proposal of marriage on that day by Dodgson to the 11-year-old Alice Liddell. So that's right. There seems to be strong indications that Lewis Carroll was probably a pedo. He was very into children. He took nude pictures of them. A lot of these pictures have disappeared. A lot of his diaries have disappeared. It stands to reason that someone was trying to cover all this up. And if he was obsessed with and maybe even wanted to marry this young Alice, if this is the Alice from Alice in Wonderland, well, that kind of makes you wonder, what is Alice in Wonderland all about then? You know, do we need to reevaluate what this story is all about? Why is it so popular? Why would such a questionable author be raised to such a high level of popularity? Why would his book be so popular in schools and in all kinds of children's establishments? So I don't know. I don't know what it all means, but I just kind of wanted to give a different perspective on a topic that maybe a lot of you haven't gotten. And as I said, this isn't about promoting Mr. Letter. It's just about allowing for a middle ground. Can I approach this from the middle and just sort of look into it and decide what I think about it without being branded some sort of far right conspiracy theorist? Is that okay? Can I do that? It's like kind of absurd that I need to even ask that question. So I don't know. I hope this was maybe a little insightful to somebody or maybe got you thinking.